So I can't do what Holly does, which is speak a lot of Spanish. Yeah, very excited to be here. One of my goals, and I think one of my jobs, or if not my biggest job as a project lead, is to really listen to all of you. What is working, what is not working, what are the things we can do better. And so, one of my goals this week, and I'll be here all week, is to really talk to many of you that represent the many countries in Latin America, and to try and figure out what we can do different or better. So feel free to come and talk to me, and I'll take that information into account and help drive the things that we do. So this is my Spanish, and to be honest, I just Googled it. I didn't even, I was going to try and read it to you, but after Holly did what she did, I feel like I just moved forward. And so, as I was thinking about what to present at this DrupalCon, I decided that I wanted to talk a little bit about the future of the web. And I don't necessarily know what the future is going to look like. It could be very wrong, but I do spend a lot of my time thinking about the future and then trying to tie that back to Drupal and what we have to do as a Drupal project. And so, basically, that's what I'm going to talk about today. And one of the things which I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about is this idea that the best user experience always wins. And I talked a little bit about this in Austin. For those that have watched my keynote in Austin, I'm not going to repeat my keynote from Austin, just a couple slides. But if you remember, I showed this picture, which is the photographic apparatus. And it was effectively the first camera ever made, right? And it was very difficult to use because it took a lot of these different steps, which you can see here on the screen. And so these are little photos taken from the manual of the photographic apparatus. And as you can see, it took 12 steps, and some of the steps I've actually cut out. It took at least 12 steps to make a photo. It involved chemicals. In the photo, it actually involves multiple different people, right? And so if you then look at the history of the camera, which I'm very passionate about, you can see that over the many years thereafter, the experience of making a photo was drastically simplified every major step along the way. And so ultimately today, we have a smartphone, and the act of taking a photo is very easy. You just press a button. And it's not just the act of taking a photo, it's also, sharing that photo has become very, very easy. And the result is that the camera is basically now in everybody's pocket. And so it went from being something that maybe a few dozen people used to something that, billions of people use every day. And as you can see from this diagram, there's been many big steps, all the way from the Polaroid, which kind of made it very easy to take photos, to digital cameras. So all of these steps advance things dramatically. One of the interesting things about that is also the fact that with every step, the technology actually became more complex, which is kind of fascinating. There's this interesting sort of play, I guess, between ease of use and complexity. For example, the initial camera, the photographic apparatus, was actually fairly easy, even though it took a lot of steps. Compared to the cell phone today, very few people actually know how that works. There's a lot of different pieces, hardware and software standards and things like JPEG. And there's a lot of complexity in taking a photo. We've been able to abstract that quite a bit. And so this is true for actually the most fundamental things in life. And so as I started to think about this theme of everything evolves to being easier to use, it's true for, hunting for food, right? If you think about what it would take back in the day to, get food, it was very hard. People had to go out and hunt and then, make a fire and prepare it. And today, it's almost like food hunts for us, right? So, if you go home, there's flyers in the mailbox. They deliver pizza straight to your door. So the evolution of food and how to make food has changed so dramatically. Every step along the way, it also has become easier and easier to consume food. Same thing with heating. Imagine, thousands of years ago, the complexity of making a fire to heat yourself. Today, you just come home and turn on the heat, and you're ready. Or more recently, the Nest just basically turns on the heat for you. And so it evolved from something that was hard work to something that basically is zero work. And funny enough, I was talking to Holly just before this keynote, and we were talking about knitting. Not that I'm an expert on knitting, but what was interesting to me was that this is really the act of making clothing. And so back in the day, to make clothing, you had to basically hunt down an animal or, shave a sheep and make your own clothing. Today, again, you basically go and buy clothing. And so I think this is a very big truism, like something that is true for everything, that it always evolves to being easier and easier to use. And so that's interesting because if you think about that in the context of the web and Drupal, I started to think about how could the web evolve? What are some of the most fundamental changes that we could make to the web that will provide big leaps in ease of use? And so I came up with an idea. I'm not sure it's the right idea, or I don't know if it's the idea that will win, but I believe it could win. And I believe there's some early evidence of a big shift in how the web works. And so let me first present it to you, and then I'll tie it back to Drupal. So the basic notion is that the current web is pull-based. By that I mean that you have to go to websites. If you want to look up some information, you have to go to multiple websites usually to get that information. And that works well, right? That's how we work today. But I believe the big shift that could happen is that we shift from pull to push. And what I mean by push is that websites or organizations are going to start pushing more information to you so that you don't have to go to them. And so this, in the sense of content management and content, what that really means is that instead of us going to content, content will come to us. And it's a very big shift. It's a very big shift in the underlying architecture even of the web. But if we can make that shift, I do believe we'll have made a very big step in making the web easier to use. And so, in a way, we're already there a little bit, and we see some services emerge that do exactly this. And so I don't know how many of you know Flipboard. If you know Flipboard, raise your hand. All right, most of you do, great. I wasn't sure how popular it was here. But Flipboard is interesting because what they do is they aggregate information from thousands of websites. They put it all together, and then they use a user profile, some information that they know about you, things that you've told Flipboard that you like, to serve you the best content to your likings. And so this is a pull-based model, basically, where instead of you having to go to thousands of websites or hundreds or dozens of websites, all of that information is aggregated and pushed to you. Or Facebook. The pull-based method for Facebook is to go to your family and your friends and to check in with them and ask them, so how are you doing? And Facebook flipped that model around. And so instead of you having to go to all your friends or family, you can you get that information pushed to you, right? And it makes it very, very easy to know how everybody is doing. Makes it easy to keep track of hundreds of friends, something which wasn't possible before. So again, this switch made it made a big improvement in how easy it is to do an activity. In this case, in the case of Flipboard, it's about reading articles that you like. In the case of Facebook, it's staying in touch with your friends. There's many other early examples. Google Now is another example. So they push all sorts of information to you. A lot of it today is around events. Like you have to leave to go to the airport, you have to do this. Also other things that they do. And again, it's this fundamental different model about how the web works, where information is pushed to you. And most recently, I believe last week, they announced that they now enable other applications like Pandora or eBay or Airbnb to integrate in that stream of information. And they can also start pushing information to you. So, these are some early examples. And so what do all of these things have in common? Well, quite a few things, actually. A lot of these condense the information. They show you a piece of the information, or they summarize it nicely, so you don't have to read all of these things. They usually use aggregators as well. They're personalized. They push you to things you're interested in, and they try to make these streams, if you will, as relevant as possible. Flipboard, Facebook definitely doesn't show you anything. It tries to be smart about what it shows to you. It's also actionable. A lot of these things you can click on to go read it. You can reply to a Facebook comment, all of these things. And then, as I mentioned, they use these notions of streams of information coming to you instead of you going there. And so I start to think about what would that mean for Drupal, and what are some other experiences that take these early concepts, really. But Facebook in my mind is an early concept of what it could be, and try to come up with a more advanced example. And so, the one that I came up with was actually, Valentine's Day, because that was the problem that I was having last week. So I don't know. So it's a very real example. I don't know if you celebrate Valentine here. Do you? Some? No? Do you know what it is? Yeah, all right. Y'all, it's very popular in North America, also in Europe. But basically, the big challenge that a lot of people have is, what should I get her? Or what should I get him? If you're, if you're into, dating women. And so there's a lot of options, lots of things you can get: flowers and cards or chocolates, dinners, champagne, clothing, you name it, right? And so imagine you actually know what you want to get her. And so I boiled it down to getting flowers, chocolates, cards, and a dinner, which seems quite nice. But then I started getting those things, and it's actually very complex to try and organize all of these things. First, I have to go find flowers. And so imagine I'm doing all of this online, right? So now I need to Google flower shops. I have to go to the flower website, pick the flowers that I want, pay them, which means I have to sign up, give my personal information, give my credit card information, give my shipping information, hit, buy, go through a whole process, not just for flowers. And then I need chocolates. And so I need to go to multiple websites that sell chocolates. Or maybe there is one website that will sell multiple kinds of chocolate. But I have to find the right chocolates. So same thing. I have to go there, I have to find them, I have to sign up for the site, I have to pay, I have to check out, all of these things. The same thing with getting a cart and then a restaurant as well. So the restaurant, I need to figure out where will we be, find a restaurant in the area, make a reservation, all of these steps. And so the entire process of organizing a Valentine's date can easily take 2 to 3 hours, at least for me, if not longer. Like if you want to get fancy and get a special gift, it's even more time to make all of these arrangements. And so that is very much the old model. That's the current model. But imagine what that could look like in a push model, right? And this is just one experience. But first of all, what's very helpful for many of us is to get a notification. Valentine is going to be in 4 days. You should get your act together. And so you can swipe, and you swipe into this magical app, which is an aggregator. And what it will show you is relevant suggestions, maybe based on your past behavior, things you bought last year, chocolates, flowers, dinner reservation. It kind of shows you an overview of the 4 things you want to do. And maybe if you swipe, there's more suggestions. But basically using this notion of curated streams, personalized streams that are aggregated and then also condensed, just like Flipboard, just like Facebook, just like Google Now. And so you can then swipe into any of these things and allows you to choose between different chocolates. In this case, Girardelli. These experiences could be branded. And so they could be pushed from the vendor, and they could be branded and that kind of stuff. But maybe there's some others. And then if I want to buy them, I just hit buy now. Like, I don't have to go off to another website. I don't have to provide my credit card information. I don't have to provide my shipping address. I can simply, with one click, buy these chocolates. And then I go on to the next item, flowers. Maybe it presents me different options for flowers, maybe kinds of flowers that I gave in the past. And it presents them in a very easy-to-use overview screen. And again, I just buy them, and magically all of these things ship in time. And so, of course, this will lead to success. But not only does it lead to success, it actually could reduce this entire experience of having to go out to multiple websites to something which I could do in 2 or 3 minutes with this magical app, right? It could become very easy. And so in my mind, this would be a big leap in making the web easier to use. And just like these other things, making food, heating yourself, or the evolution of the camera, these are big shifts that would fundamentally change how we consume the web. And they're probably going to win, because as we've seen with many of these technologies, this is how the web evolves. And it's also a big win for me, of course, as I just mentioned. And so, if you assume this is one possible way of how the web could evolve, and again, this is just one way it could be, but I think it's fair to say that the switch from pull to push seems very reasonable. Whether it will look exactly like this, I don't know. So how would you make this happen? Well, if we kind of open up that box, that app, well, there's a lot of different things going on here. First of all, this app knows that I'm in a relationship. It knows my relationship status. Facebook today knows these things about me. The app may know my shipping address, which other services know. Amazon knows my shipping address. Google knows my shipping address. The app knows my payment information. Apple, with Apple Pay, knows these things. And they're actually effectively building, sort of a payment provider. Product preferences. Amazon knows a lot about what I like, because I've spent lots of money buying things on Amazon over the last, so many years. And so they may know that I actually like Lindt chocolates over other kinds of chocolates. And so this app could maybe tap into Amazon. And then, of course, if I want to make a restaurant reservation, it's helpful to know where I'm based. And so my location, matters to this app as well. And so it's not, I think we can assume that a lot of these experiences will use some sort of personal information. And that having access to that personal information will provide a breakthrough. And so we can see that if you look at Facebook, their filings, they actually place a value on every user, which is kind of scary, right? But they say every user on Facebook is worth about $120. And so having that information for these large players is actually very valuable. To build this ultimate experience, you kind of need to have access to all of these things. Today, none of these big vendors, Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they don't have access to all of these things. So if you look at this in a map, and I can break this down in more detail, but you see that some have access to some data and others have access to some other data. And then there's also features like, if you believe this notion of streams and card-based streams is true, then some of them have actually built these stream interfaces and others have not. But it's not, I think we can assume that a lot of these big vendors will try to check all the boxes over time, because that's the way you build these experiences. And they have to build them, I think, because companies don't like sharing that information with one another. They like to keep it for themselves, and neither do users really want to share it between too many different services. And so the big elephant in the room, at least in my mind, is what about privacy? I mean, this all looks great, but it also looks a little scary. And again, a lot of these things exist today. And for example, Amazon knows about my product preferences, my tastes, and I kind of expect Amazon to make recommendations. I mean, they do, based on my tastes. Right? And so a lot of it is the relation that you get into when you start. Like when I sign up for Amazon, I know they're going to know my tastes, and I know they're going to make recommendations about my tastes. And that's fine. And similarly, I know that Facebook knows a lot about my friendships and my relationship status. And it's fine if they make suggestions based on that. Where it gets creepy, of course, is when, say, Amazon starts to, learn or make assumptions about my relationship status based on things that I do on the website. So, or, vice versa, Facebook, right? I mean, if you don't go into that relationship with that website, like knowing, like, this is what I'm going to give you and this is what you're going to know about me, but if they start to derive information implicitly, that's where things get a little creepy. And I think this is very real. I think a lot of people think about this. A lot of people worry about privacy. And I think it is a big deal. It's something that we need to figure out. And so I found this video online, which I think captures sort of the public thinking about this right now. And so I asked somebody to put subtitles on it. It's a little English clip, and I got the subtitles. I actually can't validate the subtitles, so I hope it's done right. But I'm going to play it for you now, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit. Some of you may have seen this.
Excuse me, Judge Purd. I'm Ben Wyatt, City Manager. What Grizzle is doing with our private information may not technically be illegal, but it's definitely not chill.
Whoa, that's a serious allegation, homie. We are hella chill. And frankly, if you don't like our vibe, you don't have to use our shiz.
Well, we kind of do. I mean, the internet is no longer optional. It's a necessity for everyone. And I think you do know that data mining isn't chill because you snuck it into the 27th update of a 500-page user agreement. A person should not have to have an advanced law degree to avoid being taken advantage of by a multi-billion-dollar company. You should be upfront about what you're doing and allow people the ability to opt out.
To be honest, Judge Purd is stumped by this case. I've also misplaced my judge hammer. I cannot render a verdict here. Therefore, I must declare a mistrial, which is a term I've heard people use in the movies. Tap, tap, tap. Case ended.
And we're clear. All right, later, dudes.
So, I mean, I think the fact that, TV shows are kind of like, picking up these concerns, I think, means that it's on a lot of people's minds, and now we have to do something about it. I think for me, sort of the killer line, I guess, is that you have to be upfront about how you use people's information. Because everything else is kind of creepy. But actually, a lot of these big players are actually starting to do a good job. And so Facebook, for example, allows you to log in on other websites with your Facebook ID or your Facebook credentials. And when you do, usually you get like a pop-up like this, and it says, Facebook is going to share this information. Like your public profile, it can share. That includes your hometown, your gender, your age. I mean, it includes quite a few things. Your email address. Sometimes it will want to share your friend list. Other times it will ask you to share the events you're going to attend. And so it's a lot of information that's being shared. But as a user, you have full transparency. Like it's being told to you. And it's also permission-based, meaning you can choose to click OK, or you can choose to not share that information if you want to as well. And I think that's the right model. And I believe that's where the industry will evolve to. And I think it will enable the path to these kinds of experiences that I presented. So, again, it's all about the experience and improving the experience. So how does it all work? I wanted to peel off another layer of the onion, if you will, and drill in a little bit more. Because this is how we get to what's Drupal's role in this world, if it happens to come true. Well, people we'll still have to create a lot of content in this world, whether it's articles, whether that go through a Flipboard-like application, whether it's status updates, like in Facebook, or whether it's products, like in my Valentine app, if you will. And so, content is created, it gets entered into a content management system, it will most likely present it on a website. But what will definitely happen is that content will be packaged in cards, or it will be basically sent to these aggregators over web services, right? And the aggregators in my model, they collect cards from lots of different websites, hundreds or thousands or millions of websites. And what they then do is they run it through this filter, basically. Like they go from all these different things, they filter it down based on things like location, history of buying things, your interests that you explicitly tell them, your location, all of these things. And out of that comes a stream of relevant cards that most likely you'll be interested in, that are relevant to your context. Valentine, if it's a birthday that's coming up, it could be for a birthday, or if it's just an articles that I'm interested in. And so this relevant stream of information comes out of these platform vendors and basically make it all the way to your phone. And so you get the stream on the phone, and each of these cards will be actionable. Like if it's a Facebook card, you can comment there. If it's if it's a product, you can buy it. Whatever it is, there will be actions. Users will obviously take actions, and as you take actions, it will actually feed back into these algorithms, into these platforms, and they'll learn a little bit more about you, and that's how they learn more and more and more, and they'll probably use that information for personalizing these things even more. And so it goes back into the filter. It's like a machine learning, self-learning thing, and then ultimately, if you do happen to buy something versus consume some content, the payment will be processed, products will be shipped, and that's how it works. And so it kind of adds up, very simplified, and it's actually a little bit more complex in my mind, but I simplified it. It adds up to these 4 steps. And so now the question is, what does that mean for Drupal? Because in this model, the concept of a website as a destination is starting to disappear, right? In a push-based world, it's unlikely or less likely that you will go out to a website, because instead information gets pushed to you. And so that means a lot of different things for us as a community and for Drupal as a product. And so in such a world, where does Drupal fit in? And I read a great quote from Jeff Bezos actually the other day. So we can start thinking about what do we have to do to fit into this world? Or we can do the opposite, as Jeff Bezos suggests. And he says, ask yourself what is not going to change, and double down on these things. If you know it's not going to change for 20, 30, 40 years, then basically put all your effort into these things, or put lots of effort into these things. And so from this graph, it's pretty easy to say what's not going to change in the context of Drupal. I mean, obviously, people are going to keep creating content. Content needs to be stored in a content repository, and that content will have to, be sent out of that repository using, JSON or XML or some sort of format. So that's never going to change. What's also not going to change is the delivery, meaning people will consume content on their mobile devices or desktops or any kind of device. That's also not going to change, and we need to present that information to them. And it needs to be branded, as I showed you, so it needs to have some sort of theming. And then there will be actions, like if people want to read it, they have to go to the website to read it. If they buy something, there's going to be an e-commerce transaction happening, and things like that. What's more new is the aggregation piece. And one of the questions is, what's Drupal's role, in being an aggregator? It's hard to imagine Drupal can be the platform that powers Facebook, for example, because it's so massive. But it's easy to imagine that Drupal can power smaller sites. I mean, we have a lot of these pieces. I mean, we have aggregator module. It actually happens to be in core, and it aggregates information from different sources. We used to have OpenID in core. And that's interesting because the way OpenID is evolving, it actually has potential of being this filter system. Right? A lot of it is about identity and storing preferences and making that ID move across multiple websites. And so, yeah, maybe Drupal can play a role in this magical filter system. And then it's easy to see how Drupal can output streams of cards. And also, as it relates to commerce, obviously there's a commerce solution for Drupal or multiple, but I think payment processing and shipping, these are sort of outside of the realm of things that Drupal can do. And so, again, some things that we can assume will always be true is brands will always create content. And so if you look at Drupal 8, and some of the things we've done is we have a new content creation page. We added WYSIWYG to core. We made it possible or easy to author content on mobile devices. We've invested a lot in multilingual and making it easy to create multilingual content. And so we've actually doubled down on something that we know will never change, which is great. Or we also know that site builders always want a simpler experience. It goes back to the central theme of this presentation, like simplicity. The user experience matters. And so a lot of things we've done will actually make it easier to build powerful websites. Things like views in core, or inline editing, or restyling the admin UI, or making the backend responsive. These are all things which makes it easier, which is great. The other thing that is really important in a world where this aggregation thing may be real and where output needs to go from Drupal sites to these aggregators is that we need to get really, really good at outputting structured content. And a lot of the changes in Drupal 8 will help with that. From adding new fields to the entity system, entity reference and email fields, things that are structured, to making everything an entity. Like in Drupal 7, blocks were not entities. In Drupal 8, they are. Again, provides us better tools to create structured content, to adding views to core, which also allows us to output information in a structured way over web services. And then the other thing we know is that machines will need to understand the content as well as humans do. And again, a lot of the things we've done in Drupal 8 will help with that. Adding, again, web services API to core, things like schema.org are all interesting things which will help us be ready for a future world like this. On the delivery side, we know that users are always going to look at content. And so we need to do a really good job of presenting that content to these users on any kind of device. And a lot of the changes in Drupal 8 will help with that. And so, to sum it up, really, I personally think this future is pretty interesting and pretty exciting, actually. And I think it's very, very disruptive to go from pull to push. I mean, I think it's going to disrupt or change the advertising industry. I mean, it changes business models. It's a very big shift that I think we'll see play out in the next 10, 20 years. I don't think it will happen overnight. But at the same time, we know it's not going to change. And we've actually contributed a lot of big improvements to these things. And so I believe that Drupal will be in a great place to be part of this massive transformation of the web. And so, of course, I couldn't finish this keynote without talking a little bit about Drupal 8 and when it will be ready. Say that again? It's not done yet. And so, I mean, as probably many of you know, we are doing beta releases. We're asking people to start porting their modules to give us feedback to help us find bugs and help fix bugs. So that's essentially where we are today. One of the things that's maybe a little special, which you may not know about, is that right now we do not support beta to beta upgrades. There's no upgrade path, say to go from beta 4 to beta 6. However, we want to start providing beta-to-beta upgrades, which will make it easier for people to adopt beta releases early in the process. And so of all the critical bugs, we identified those that block us from providing an upgrade pad. And so we call these beta pad blockers. And so we only have about 12 left today. Maybe it's a little bit less today or a little bit more, but it was 12 a few days ago. And once we have those fixed, if that goes to 0, then we will start to provide upgrade pads between beta releases. And at that point, we have to focus on fixing all the other criticals, which today is about 60, I think, 59 criticals that are left. And so, we've come a long way. We went from 150 to about 60. And so once we hit 0, we're going to start doing release candidates. And then once the release candidates are stable and we'll test it, we're going to release Drupal 8. Sounds simple, huh? The truth is we do need your help. 60 critical bugs doesn't sound like a lot, but it is actually, some of them are very difficult to fix. And we're actually fixing quite a few of them every week. But there's also critical bugs coming in every week. And so right now we're fixing more bugs than are coming in, which is great, which wasn't the case for a long time. So the number is going down, but we definitely need help, helping these bugs fixed. So please come and join us. And then the other thing that we changed, which some of you may like, is that as of Drupal 8, we changed the way we will basically do releases. And we go from major releases to having major and minor releases, and we will be able to add new features, new APIs, to minor releases of Drupal 8. At the same time, we'll do our very, very best to maintain backwards compatibility between minor releases. And the result of that will be that you'll get new stuff with every minor release. Hopefully every 6 months or so, we'll do a minor release, and you'll get new features. And so we'll be able to continuously innovate with Drupal 8 in a way that we haven't done with Drupal 7. And then once we go to Drupal 9, we will start breaking APIs again. So that's it. Thank you. And I think there's a little bit of time for questions. And then tomorrow, actually, Larry Garfield, the man here, will also talk about, we'll talk about Drupal 8 a lot more. And so it should be a great follow-up, I think, to this keynote. I don't know, Larry, but Larry will go into a little bit more technical details about some of the things in Drupal 8. So any questions? No questions. There is never no questions. There's a question. Yeah, so Acquia Lift, I guess, it's an Acquia product that looks at clickstream data and then tries to build user profiles that people can use to, personalize content on a website. And so, sorry, what was the question? Yeah, right now it is not, right? But maybe in the future it will be. So, undecided. Question?
Hello?
Yep. Hello.
So my question will be, what will be your advice to all Latin Americans to make Drupal more into all levels of government, education, and the main, pillars that have been successful in other advanced countries? Right.
It's a great question. There's not a one answer, like one sentence answer, to be honest. I think, a couple of things need to happen. One, I think the ecosystem needs to be ready, meaning if you want to work with governments or certain organizations, you probably need to have companies of a certain size with the right kind of approach and processes that may or may exist, I don't know. But so the ecosystem definitely usually needs to grow to a certain size where it can support these kinds of organizations, because a lot of the big organizations, they want to work with other big organizations. It's just kind of how it works. So that's one thing. Secondly, one of the things that's most powerful is actually having great references. And so local references, example websites, large websites that have adopted Drupal and that are, success stories that had great results, whether it's, they can now build websites faster, or they saved a lot of money, or they're able to keep up with the pace of innovation that they need. Like whatever it is, we need these success stories, and we have a lot of them in the world, but probably need a lot of local success stories too. And so it takes time to build these success stories. Like you have to start with smaller ones and then get bigger and bigger and bigger. So again, it takes time to build these success stories. But once you have them, you have to tell them. And that's usually where it breaks down. Like people don't actually tell them enough. And so telling the success stories, building the ecosystem, I think these are the biggest things that you need. And, I would say these are the two big things in my mind. And maybe if there's technical things that is holding back adoption of Drupal here, I think we would love to know as well, obviously. But I think my guess is that from a product point of view, Drupal is ready to support these large organizations. It's everything around Drupal that also needs to be ready. Other questions? No questions. Oh, there's a question. Oh, there's going to be a mic right there.
Okay. Thank you. After Drupal 8 is released, what's going to happen with Drupal 6 and 7?
Right.
Are they going to disappear?
No. Yeah, it's a great question. So the Drupal community basically supports the two latest versions of Drupal right now. And so what happens when Drupal 8 get released, that we will support Drupal 8, obviously, and Drupal 7. And so Drupal 6 will, be unsupported shortly after Drupal 8 gets released. Not on the same day, but there will be a little bit of overlap. And so that means that you should probably either upgrade to Drupal 7 or plan to upgrade fairly quickly to Drupal 8 after the Drupal 8 release, which may or may not be practical given the complexity of your website. Because there may be dependencies on modules. These modules may not be ready. And so you may find yourself in a situation where you have to go to 7. One thing that we did change, is, a couple of other points there. One thing that we changed is that the security team changed its policies and will encourage commercial organizations or non-commercial organizations to step up and help provide support for Drupal 6. And so hopefully organizations will step up, and there will be security fixes for Drupal 6. But we cannot guarantee that right now. But, like with anything, if the community rallies around continuing to support Drupal 6, then, of course, Drupal 6 will be supported. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
There's a question in the back.
Hi. Where do you think the community needs more help? It may be, I don't know, the migration API, the views API, the core API. Where do you think the community needs more workforce so we can help?
Right. I mean, we need a lot of help across the board, really, from documentation to helping with the upgrade path to fixing critical bugs to fixing, non-critical bugs, major bugs, to providing us usability feed. I mean, there's so much work to do. And so, obviously, what's in the critical path to the release of Drupal is all the critical bugs. And so, if you help with the critical bugs, that will actually accelerate the Drupal 8 release, which would be great. But there's many other things that we do need help with. And so it's really more about finding what you're passionate about and the things you want to help with because you think these are interesting, combined with a sort of a sense of, I think, importance. I think, at least for me personally, I get passionate about working on things which have, impact. And so I naturally gravitate towards, helping to fix critical bugs versus other things. But I think it's a bit of a personal choice as well. So if you need ideas, if you don't know where to start, come and see there's a lot of us today, from Kathy to Jess. Like, we can all help you get oriented if you're looking for ways to get involved and to help. So there's a question there, and then we'll go there. We'll start
Hello.
there. Hey.
Pregunta en español.
Great. Hola.
¿Qué medidas está tomando Drupal 8 para mejorar la experiencia de usuario y la facilidad de uso para los constructores de sitios web?
I don't have a. What steps have we taken, or should we take?
¿Cuáles están tomando para Drupal 8? Para facilidad de uso y mejorar la experiencia de usuario.
Oh, there's a lot of steps actually. One example is, say, multilingual, which is very relevant, here, right? To build a fully multilingual website with Drupal 7, it took 30 modules, contributed modules that people had to download, install, configure, and make work together. And so in Drupal 8, we've actually taken a lot of these things and moved them into Drupal 8 Core. So Drupal 8 Core will ship with a much, much richer set of multilingual capabilities. And that will drastically improve the site builder experience because you can now set up a multilingual website with much less effort, much easier to set up a multilingual website. So that's just one example of where we've literally spent, I don't even know, many, many man-years improving the multilingual aspects. Another example could be views in core, which also makes it very easy for people to customize certain things in the admin UI or to create custom views without, again, having to download or change things in Drupal 7. And other things include, in my mind, some of the things we've done around the block system, and now making it much easier to place blocks, in multiple different locations and these kinds of things. So there's a lot of little pain points in 7 that we've eliminated in Drupal 8. So it's a list of hundreds of things, of small tweaks that will improve the user experience for site builders. So, there's a question there, I think.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. I don't know where the mic is.
I have a question.
Oh,
I would like to ask you about performance. Drupal 8 versus Drupal 7 is better or needs more resources?
Yeah, so it's a little bit mixed right now. So in certain situations, Drupal 8 is actually faster. So if you're serving anonymous pages, Drupal 8 should be faster than Drupal 7. If you're serving pages for authenticated users, it should actually, it's currently slower for the most part. However, we did make a lot of improvements to the caching system in Drupal 8. So hopefully that will get us to a place where Drupal 8 can actually be, more efficient at serving pages for authenticated users, or at least our caching strategies can be more advanced, with the result that the overall performance impact hopefully will be better. So, some things are better, some things have a lot of potential, other things we know we have to work on. So this will be an area where we will spend more time. So the way we work is we make a lot of changes, and it's kind of hard to track the performance of all of these changes as we're making them. So once everything is baked, if you will, now is the time where we can start working on performance improvements. So there's actually a little team, a performance working group, if you will, and I think they meet weekly or every other week. It's open to anyone. And it's a group of people that kind of look at the performance of Drupal 8 and try to coordinate where to best spend their efforts. And so there's people actively working on making Drupal 8 faster and getting us where we need to be. So happy to talk more about performance offline if you will. So I don't know who was next, but I don't know who has the mic.
Hi.
But
Hello?
Raise your hand. Oh, there you are.
Yes, my question is around security. It seems like in 2014 you hear of a lot of major companies with breaches, and I know I think it was the 7.32 release was a major security release. So I guess I'm wondering, how are those vulnerabilities exposed in Drupal, and how is that? Are there any additional security enhancements with Drupal 8?
No, it's a great question. We have a security team, obviously, and every patch that gets committed goes through security review. So we have quite a few eyeballs looking for security issues, but as you probably know, we can't catch every single security problem, and so things do slip through the crack. The solution is to have even more eyeballs on that problem, or to use some automated tools to the extent possible to try and find security issues. And so that's, I guess, an area where we can improve on both areas, to be honest. We can always try and find more people to review the security of Drupal, and we can try and invest in automated tooling to help find security issues as well. But yeah, security is a tough one. One more question? One more question. I don't know who has the mic. Well, he was waiting the longest, I think. The gentleman all the way on the right.
I know that Drupal is a project, open source project, that has welcomed the participation of women, into that community. But from your perspective, what can be done to improve that participation, make it evolve, to make more women participate into the main project?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think we all want more diversity in the project, and I think a lot of that is, it's a very hard problem, right? It starts, in a way, it starts all the way with, how people grow up and how they're preconditioned. But I think the solution is to really just foster a culture of being very open to diversity and to be inclusive of everyone, and to try and create an environment where everybody feels welcomed and safe and like they can participate. And so I think a lot of it is culture. And then obviously there's a lot of things we can do in addition to create the right culture. We can have special initiatives around getting more, say, women into Drupal as well. And I think all of these are awesome. And we have done some of these things, like we have sponsored, conferences where, organized for women in technology, for example. And so we do some of these initiatives, but there's always more that we can do. And hopefully, as we get bigger, as the Drupal Association gets bigger, we'll be able to do more of these things. I also believe we have some great role models in the Drupal community, which I think also is really important. Like we have a lot of very strong female leaders in the Drupal project, and hopefully that will inspire other people to join as well. So, all right, thank you. I'll be around all week. So.